Why is Aurora water here? We're out in the plains. We don't have too many trees unless somebody planted them in their yard. Well, we do have a lot of infrastructure in the WUI, and that's what has driven us to participate in, I think, a very exciting group, the Front Range Fuels Treatment Partnership, or now we've shortened it to the Front Range Roundtable. But those of you who do water issues know that there's also roundtables that talk about water, so it's a little confusing to some of us water folks, but um, it's a really great group. I do all the federal permitting for Aurora Water, so when we need a 404 permit or have to write an environmental impact statement, that comes into my group that I work with. After the Hayman fire in 2002, the roundtable was formed. It took about 2 years for people to kind of shake off the cobwebs of the activity that was happening and dealing with the aftermath of the fire. But in 2004, local, state, federal groups, NGOs, private business, and others got together to discuss what the hazards were in the WUI, and that was the goal of doing that. Here's a couple pictures of the Hayman fire. The Hayman fire brought to light the magnitude of the problem. There's more than 4.2 million acres of forested land in the Front Range. More than 1/3 are out of whack ecologically, and they exist in unhealthy conditions and have not been managed properly. That's an interesting concept. When I first became involved, and say, "Oh, hold it! It's not my job at Aurora Water to manage the forest. That's you guys, Forest Service, Smokey Bear, and all you guys. You go out there and manage." Well, the reality is that they don't have really a public mandate to manage the forests for other activities. They don't have the funding to adequately manage it. So we kind of had to put differences aside, and it's kind of a Zen thing. It just is. Just where it is right now, and pick up from there and learn to work together. The areas that really need the greatest restoration are in the montane zone, and it is more the ponderosa pine and mixed conifer forests. And there's sort of an elevation band that goes with that, above 6,500 feet to less than 8,000 feet. And we look at that in the upper and lower montane zones. We also have a subalpine zone that has been decimated by the pine bark beetle, but there's very little consensus on how best to treat that. And so again, instead of arguing over what we couldn't work on and wouldn't have the money to deal with anyway, we looked for avenues to work together on the areas that we could agree on. These areas also are the areas closest to population centers and have a lot of the infrastructure running through it. So the Roundtable spent quite a bit of time putting together a mission. I think it probably took almost a year to put together their mission statement and get buy-in from all of the different stakeholder groups that were in there. And it did have everybody. I mean, it had professors from CU, they had engineers, they had Denver Water, they had just a wide range of folks. It started out with about 60 people from 30 organizations, and basically the bottom line was there was about 1.5 million acres total that we wanted to look at in terms of restoration that were in need of immediate restoration or rehabilitation. We also looked at areas that really needed the help and were really threatened. I mean, within this zone, there are 881 communities, more than 2 million people, 700,000 homes. The water supply for 3/4 of the state's population have transmission facilities that run through these forests. So we were very, very concerned. This is just sort of a breakdown of some of the other fun facts to know and tell about essential water supply structures, miles of road, transmission lines. That's something that people don't think about too often, but all the electricity that's distributed around the state runs through the forest, and when there's a fire, that can be heavily disrupted. Communications towers are often in remote sites. They can also be infected. So basically, these fires can affect all of us regardless of where we live along the Front Range. For utilities, and this is right after the Buffalo Creek fire, which actually happened prior to the Hayman fire. This was in 1996. We had just tremendous flash flood afterwards, and we basically lost about 15% of the storage capacity in Strontia Springs Reservoir. And the cost to the utilities from an event like that, we kind of break down into three categories. There's real and measurable effects, those that we can go out and say, well, we had to spend X amount of money to rehabilitate this land or to remove sediment from the reservoir. We have real but immeasurable costs, chemical treatments, loss of storage capacity, kind of a economic analysis that doesn't really enter into anything because the chemical prices always change. You order in bulk, so even though you use more for a while, it's really hard to get your hands on a number of, we had to spend 10% more for chemicals. Well, was that because the price of chemicals went up 25%? We were actually more efficient, and it was just a mess trying to get any numbers out of that. The loss of storage capacity is sort of another thing. It's sort of a, if but for that, would we have been able to store additional water at Strontia Springs Reservoir? And then we have perceived impacts that are costs, and that'd be like the quality of the water and our vulnerability. What do our ratepayers think about the water? Taste and odor are probably the number one issue that comes about from this sediment. And the quality of the water meets all the standards, but it just doesn't look very good. It doesn't taste very good. So there's a quality perception there that has some costs, and sort of a public cost in the public's eyes. This is actually a picture of Strontia Springs with all the debris that was up against the dam right after the Buffalo Creek flash flood. That was in summer 1996. And as we said, we'll go back to that 4.2 million acres of forest, all land types. 2 million acres are important for habitat of 31 different species for concern. 80% of the Front Range forests have recreational opportunity, attracting some of Colorado's 28 million overnight visitors, which spend $10 billion annually. And it represents the second highest employment sector in the state with 143,000 jobs. Recreation is huge along the Front Range. And then there's also about 5 million per year available biomass from forest treatments available. So we have a lot of these different economic sort of problems to work through. But we're going to go back to the vision now, and this comes down to that whole concept of you've got this universe of 4.2 million acres of land that you know is a problem. You know that perhaps when you're dealing with other stakeholder groups that perhaps you can get a common area of understanding. And this is a Venn diagram that shows sort of that concept there, where we have ecological restoration goals for some areas, we have fire risk mitigation goals for other areas, and there's an overlap in those those goals on about 400,000 acres. And we've mapped that out. We have crack GIS team that has put together different maps and looked at that. We're not going to go into a lot of detail, but a lot of that resources available on our website or in some of the different reports that have come out of the roundtable over the years. This basically just shows the Front Range counties, where the green areas where forest restoration is required. The red is where the fire mitigation is required. And the yellow is the overlap areas. And then the crosshatched areas where they've already had fires or treatments. So it's sort of perverse, but we do sort of view fire as a treatment. There's not much we can do to go back in other than do restoration activities in some of those burned areas, and that's really at the margin. I mean, you're not going to be able to go out and reseed 138,000 acres of the Hayman fire, but you are going to be able to do a little bit of landscaping around the edges, and that's basically what happened. And then the treatment areas are those areas that have been already paid for and mitigation has taken place on them. So we had a number of roundtable goals that were developed over the years as an outgrowth of the vision statement. We wanted to identify new and state and local funding sources. That was really key. We wanted to increase the forest treatment incentives for private owners. Another important was increase the application of prescribed fire and wildland use of fire as a management tool, and I think we'll be revisiting that a lot in the next couple of months after the lower North Fork fire. We tend to build ourselves into a lot of boxes with different prescriptions of, well, you can do this or you can't do that, or you have social license to act in this area. And pretty soon those tools get fragmented, and it's really important to try to keep as many options open as possible. We want to adopt a clear and common framework for prioritizing treatments. We want to be able to communicate where these areas are and why they should be treated as soon as possible. And we try to follow up on what we've done to ensure that we're implementing those recommended procedures. We're really involved with the local group. We have local leadership and planning. There's an awful lot of folks that are available from the local governments that are part of the roundtable. And one of the reasons that we wanted to come here today is to invite all of you to become more of a part of this and look at the development of community wildfire protection plans for other communities along the Front Range that may be at risk. They may be at risk not just because of their location near forested lands, but their utilities or other infrastructure needs may be threatened too. I think that if we look back, we've had some major successes. The Woodland Park Healthy Forest Initiative started with seed funds of $75,000, and that was leveraged into $175,000 with other funding. We also proposed a collaborative forest landscape restoration program for an additional $1 million for Front Range National Forests in fiscal year 2010, and that grew to $3.4 million in fiscal year 2011 and $3.1 million this year. And we're hoping for future allocations with those projects. We've worked together. The Roundtable has representatives from the different national forests, the Arapahoe Roosevelt, the Pike San Isabel. We have local governments, we have communities, and our partners together also have successes that are consistent with the overall goal of the Roundtable. The Arapahoe Roosevelt and Pike San Isabel have entered into long-term stewardship contracts for treatment of 3,000 acres over 10 years. There's been an increase in federal funding for ground treatments for 1.8 million that's gone up, and that started in 2008. We've been using that and sort of reshuffling the funds in the Rocky Mountain region for the forest to get more of these things done. We've been working really hard on biomass utilization. There's bioheating projects in Gilpin, Boulder, and Park counties, more planned for El Paso County. There are slash sites all up and down the Front Range that were developed as part of the Front Range outreach to the local communities. Community wildfire protection plans have been developed along the Front Range, so we have about 75 of those completed after in that area out of 151 for the entire state. We're working on policies and asking for action and passage of state legislation authorizing forest improvement districts. So there's been a number of different things. What are the biggest challenges? Dollars. Where do we get the dollars? Okay. And we also look at how that planning and implementation, how do we get together and agree on the different planning and implementation projects. And then policy, how do we get everybody to buy into a policy that's effective in promoting and evaluating, monitoring things like the ignition zone, defensible space, and how do we address continuing growth and development in the WUI. We're engaging private landowners. We are looking for interagency collaboration, cooperation. We're working very hard with the U.S. Forest Service and the Colorado Forest Service. We have members from just about everywhere. That's where we are right now. We have this booklet that we put out in 2006. I have a few of them here that I'll pass out. They're also, I believe, available online as a PDF file. And we also have some technical papers that the GIS folks might be interested in on watershed wildfire protection, that we developed some GIS tools to look at ranking the 6th level watersheds within each 5th level watershed group. So that's about all that I have, and if you have any questions during the question and answer, I'd be glad to try to answer. Why is Aurora water here? We're out in the plains. We don't have too many trees unless somebody planted them in their yard. Well, we do have a lot of infrastructure in the